We are going to do a content breakdown on a brand called Bohn that makes body armor for motorcycle riders, mainly in the US. So this example of some products that they make, basically like different armored shirts and armored jackets. So what we're going to get into today is what Bohn is doing well with their small existing blog, and then what they could improve upon with that content, and then how I would kind of build out a strategy for them going forward. I'm really interested in this body armor part of the motorcycle market because I think no one is really owning the conversation in body armor. Bohn has been around for 27 years and they say that they are an authority, but you have competitors like D3O and Pandomoto and Botex that are coming in and delivering really good products and starting to create more content and eat at Bohn's market share. So I want to get into how they can create some great content to combat what other brands are doing to define that conversation around motorcycle armor. By the way, my name is Evan, and I built a motorcycle gear review media company to about 250,000 visitors per year, and the average page on our site sold about $2,200 in motorcycle gear last year per page. So overall, the entire blog, with just a blog, just informational content, sells over $500,000 in gear a year. And now I am offering the templates and the processes that I have developed to create that really high performing content to other brands, because I see a lot of brands really not doing well with content marketing, and with just a few simple fixes and some consistency, they could be delivering those kind of massive results for their brand. And again, that $500,000 figure is me with a brand and no products, just a blog, no products. So if we're doing this on a brand's domain, the results are going to be a multiple of this because you're owning that content and you also are selling products, which is a great signal to Google that we'll get into later. Cool. So if you want to do this with your website, if you want a breakdown, or if you want me to take a look at your content, my email is in the description of this video. So just check that out. Shoot me a note. Cool. On to the breakdown. So I'm going to do this breakdown a little bit differently than I've done some past ones. I'm starting to improve this process and get through it a little bit faster and focus on what really matters. So the first thing I want to do with Bohn is just look at the opportunity. What is the opportunity that Bohn has to rank for keywords within Google, which is pretty much the biggest space right now? We can also think about AI search, which is getting bigger and bigger. How can we dominate the conversation around motorcycle gear, around motorcycle armor that Bohn creates, so that Bohn is the authority there? And what I want to do is look at the overall opportunity size. Quick way to do that is go into a keyword research tool like Ahrefs that I have open here and look at a couple key foundational terms that people are searching that have to do with that brand. So for Bohn, motorcycle armor. When you think Bohn, you should be thinking motorcycle armor. That's a really big one. But they also sell hoodies, they sell shirts. To some extent, they sell jackets. People searching for jackets are going to come to Bohn. But I've just included armor, hoodie, and shirt there. And now I'm looking at the related terms. So these are the terms that the content that is ranking for armor, hoodie, shirt, and other related terms. What are those pieces ranking for? As you can see, I keep saying define the conversation around around motorcycle armor. D3O is defining the conversation. They have the most branded searches of any brand. You see D3O material, Skull Rider as well, which is a retailer, Skull Riders. They are ranking high. Bohn is also here, but D3O is eating their lunch in terms of search volume. But overall, this space, I would say the search volume says it's about 65,000. Could be a lot more than that. I noticed on our blog that some terms which I thought would maybe get 100 searches a month are getting thousands of searches. So you have to take this with a grain of salt. And usually it's lower than it actually is. But I'm just going to say search volume is 65,000 per month. So that's what Bohn could be owning. We can look at Bohn's blog here and what are the top pages. And as we can see, they're getting 5 a month. So massive opportunity. Considering Bohn is getting 5 visits a month to blog. Of course, their website itself is getting more visits, but what I'm most concerned with in content is, are we educating the customer when they are interested in these topics? Like, they're looking for comparisons, they're looking for general information, and they want to be educated, and Bohn is not providing really anything in the way of education to help their customers build trust with the brand and want to choose Bohn versus Pando or Botex or any of the other brands that are out there. So who are the competitors that are dominating? Pulled this up here. You can also look in these keyword tools for organic competitors. So here I'm just looking at Bohn's website, not just their blog, to try and get a sense for who is competing with them on different keywords, product keywords, as well as just interest related or versus content, informational content. As you can see, you've got NBT, they're building similar products and selling similar products to Bohn. Skull Riders again, McGear Hub, which is another review site. Pandomoto is a big one. Ugly Bros, they make jeans, riding jeans that are kind of similar. D3O again. And then what I want to look at here is, what are the number of competitors' keywords, like the keywords that the competitor is ranking for versus Bohn's keywords. And again, this is the overall site, not just the blog. So we can see NBT is doing significantly more in terms of keywords than Bohn is. Pandomoto is doing a massive multiple, like that's, 6 or 7 times more keywords because they have a pretty built out blog strategy. D3O as well, they're doing like 2.5 times as many keywords. And I know they have a blog here that I pulled up, and we'll get into more of this like topic selection after this. But D3O, again, all they make are armor pads, but they are writing what shoes to wear, best motorcycle shoes for summer, how to choose motorcycle gloves. This really foundational content that is then getting them new customers who may not know what D3O is, may not understand the gravity of D3O's product. That's why D3O is the name at the top of motorcycle armor here, because they're writing all this content and showing Google that they are an authority on the topic of motorcycle armor. And that's kind of what I'm recommending to every brand, but I'm definitely going to recommend to Bohn throughout here, is you need to be creating this informational content because it shows Google, it shows AI engines, basically shows every filter that is pointing people towards your brand or other brands that you are an authority on this topic. So if you're not creating that content, other brands like D3O, they're going to start taking that from you. So I'm going to say D3O. Pandomoto is another good one to study. So lost revenue, with 65,000 search volume, that's, to put it in perspective, like my website that makes $2,000 per page, 2,000 times, they could easily write 400 or 500 pages. So 2,000 times 500 pages, that's $1 million in revenue that they're missing. So I'm going to say that's about $1 million in extra revenue that they could add just by creating content, and that's per year. So problem identification, this is where I want to get into the content that Bohn has now and what they're doing. So actually, when I was looking through this, I couldn't find a blog for Bohn. And it took ChatGPT scraping their entire website to find that they do have a blog section. They just don't link it well, which is already a big problem. Link blog from homepage. If Google can't find your blog, then it's not going to index the content and you're not going to get much traffic. So that's absolutely paramount. It needs to be linked from the homepage. So we can see here, like, I think they're making this out of their YouTube content, where they're just basically making articles out of what they're saying on YouTube, which is a good strategy. It's a great way to repurpose content. But a lot of sort of, like, what is the difference between Airtex and Cool Aired Armored Shirt? This is a very brand-focused query, which is one thing we'll get into when we talk about fundamentals, is writing from the perspective of the customer versus the brand. I see a lot of that on different brand blogs and a lot of that here, where they're writing as Bohn about Bohn products rather than writing as Bohn for the benefit of the customer. The customer may not even know what Airtex is. They're probably not Googling Airtex. They just want a cool armored shirt to stay safe on the bike. So what topics can you create to rank for that kind of content and show up for those kind of queries instead of focusing just on what Bohn does and Bohn's branded products. And I noticed there's a ton of these reviews here. Reviews are great, but putting it on the blog as a blog post with this like 50-word post here, just one picture and 50 words in one paragraph, it's actually showing Google that you're almost like spamming your own blog with content that doesn't have much value, because there's not much words, or there's not much explanation. There's not much for people to learn from reading this. So you might actually be doing the blog and the entire brand and domain a disservice by creating this many pages. It would make more sense to have just a review page or a collage of different reviews, which I did see on their homepage, to do something more like that with reviews. So here, this is nice, putting a video into the blog post. It increases time on page. But that's it. Like, again, very short content. This doesn't tell me, do I need tall or short motorcycle pants, or even really what this is about. It just says, like, call us or email us. So when Google's bots are crawling this, they're not seeing that you're adding any information. And this is what Google calls thin content, and they actually penalize sites for publishing this kind of content. So content is extremely thin. That's a big thing that we need to improve. The title's also lacking much specificity. That's really important, to have a good title, have a good description. There's no description. There's no dates. Published dates are important. So there's just a lot of little things. Poor titles, no descriptions, no dates. These are just little breadcrumbs that Google and AI searchers and crawlers are looking for in order to index the content and consider it high quality. I think what I should do here is look at the top page. So there's one page that's getting a little bit of traffic, and it's this one. So it's an explainer about CE levels and abrasion resistance. So here we're getting a little bit more information. It's well laid out. You have bolding here where the eyes know where to jump, and they're pretty clearly explaining different CE ratings and abrasion resistance and impact protection and how these things break down. It's a little bit short, doesn't really feature any products or talk. I harp on this with my team a lot. Make the language human and understandable to a human. So I don't know what 35 kN, I know it means kilonewtons because I'm in this space, but if I just came to this as a motorcycle rider looking for armor, I don't know what 35 kN is or 20 kN. That means nothing to me. So it doesn't help me at all. Like, it's great to know, but I don't know. That doesn't help me choose a level 1 or level 2 any more than before I read that. So how can we translate that into human terms? Like, what does 35 kilonewtons mean? Does it mean hitting a car at 10 miles an hour, at 50 miles an hour? Like, and you can obviously caveat this and say, every crash is different. We don't really have an exact science around this, but we can say that, imagine that 35 kilonewtons is like this, 20 kilonewtons is like that. That helps people kind of grok what you're trying to say and how it applies to them. So make the content more focused on your ICP, which is your ideal customer profile, and their needs, problems. More understandable in terms of stats and versus real impact. So like kilonewton, define kilonewton in real terms. Cool. So another thing is intros. Intros I just see botched on basically every blog, and they're so important. If someone doesn't get hooked immediately at the beginning of your blog, you've lost them. They're going to go back to the search results and they're going to look for something else. And that kind of very quick return is a super bad signal to Google that your blog is not useful, because someone came there, they didn't immediately get what they wanted, or they didn't get enough that they thought, I want to stay here and read this, so they bounced. So again, creating that kind of content is actually damaging your brand. You have to improve it. So yeah, very, very bland. I see this so often where it's just a summary. Like, it's good to define CE ratings and that they're not mandatory in the US. But what we do on our content is I'll give you an example. We tell stories to try and bring in the customer. We use this format called Spear. So basically, with every introduction, we want to do 5 things. We want to show the user that we understand their search intent. Why have they arrived on this page? That Bohn intro doesn't really doesn't show me that they understand why I'm on that page to learn more about CE level 1 and 2. It shows pain points. So what are the pain points that this person is having around this topic? You're which is the last thing, building rapport with the viewer, that you understand what they're going through and you're going to help them solve it through this piece of content. Expertise, like why are you the person that's going to deliver this information or show me the right path to take? And then audience, do you understand the audience? And that's kind of more in the wording and the voice. Are you writing like a technical documentation because a scientist is reading this, or are you writing it for a motorcycle rider and showing them clearly that you understand what being a motorcycle rider is like? So for example, on ours, like we're very quickly breaking out that you're never going to find the perfect motorcycle helmet, but you've been told modular helmets are the chameleons of the helmet world that adapt to the ride. That's not right. So another thing we like to do is like myth busting, that you've been told one thing, but it's not actually right. And that creates curiosity. People want to read on and figure out, what is your take here? Modular helmets are not as safe as dedicated full faces. And quiet is an issue unless you're spending a lot on a modular helmet. So we're building these curiosity hooks that are getting people to want to read more and learn more about what our take is on this. And then another thing that I'll harp on a lot with quality is that every piece, especially when you're recommending products, should break down the ideal customers that are coming to that page. So especially with motorcycles, some people are going to be coming to that page because they ride dirt bikes. Some people are coming to that page because they ride sport bikes. Very, very different needs for those people when it comes to gear. So you need to separate them out very quickly and show them which path is right for them, or they're going to feel like I'm not in the right place. I ride a sport bike and this guy keeps talking about dirt bike riding, so this isn't the piece for me, and they'll bounce. Again, bad signal. So that's just a little breakdown on content quality, a little breakdown on introductions. I'm going to say Spear intros. I've written some stuff on quality below, so won't say any more there, but the content definitely, where was that piece, needs a lot of work. So speaking of what's working, what is working for other brands? What works in this space? What are competitors doing? I want to dig into that a little bit. So the first thing I ask when I'm looking at this question is, who is controlling the conversation around the topic that this brand wants to rank for, so the space that this brand plays in? And the easiest way to do that is to, again, go back to that competitors report and just look at who are the competitors who are really dominating, like Pando Moto and D3O. Those are the two that I want to look into today. And if we go into D3O, where is it here? Yep. So I'm looking at what is D3O ranking for? What are they in the top 10 for? We've got elbow pads, women's motorcycle jackets, best motorcycle jackets. Again, these general gear terms. So they're going above motorcycle armor just to gear in general. And you see a similar thing with Pando Moto and NBT as well. Again, Pando and NBT, they sell other items other than just like armored shirts. But so does Bohn for that matter. They sell different armored shirts and hoodies and those undershirts as well. Pando is ranking for just general motorcycle stuff like cruiser motorcycle, how much does a motorcycle cost, how much is a motorcycle. These are really important especially for new riders who are not familiar with gear, they're not familiar with this space, and Pando is putting themselves up front and center for those new customers so that when they are buying their first gear, they're remembering, Pando helped me figure out my first motorcycle sale. I'll look at them, I know they sell gear. Bohn is not doing any of that right now, so they're not a part of the conversation right up front when someone begins riding. So, what is working in the category? Well, the first thing I will say is educational authority, like what Pando is doing. That is beating promotional content. So I see a ton of blogs doing this where they create content to promote their own brand, to talk about their own brand, either exactly what their brand does, providing helpful content just around that, which is good, but you need to go further than that, or they're just writing like product announcements, we went to this event, whatever. Instead, I would take a bent from what Pando is doing, or like Revzilla's common trend, where they're winning these durable search and trust kind of queries with standard explainers. So they're explaining things like CE ratings in a lot of different content, creating hubs around that. They have really clear intros. They use a lot of diagrams. They're linking everything together, and they have a strong voice and perspective in each of their content pieces. So educational authority pieces on gear and buyer's guides, safety ratings, which is very relevant for motorcycle armor, having opinionated guides. So doing roundups where you're doing things like we do, like best modular helmets. What are best modular helmets for each different type of rider, and creating that all that kind of content. Again, for Bohn, I know they don't sell helmets, but they could still create that content because helmets are the most popular piece of gear that every rider is hopefully pretty much buying. And if Bohn is a part of that conversation when those new riders are searching for helmets, or any rider is searching for helmets, and they see, Bohn also does this body armor stuff, maybe I should get a shirt, a jacket. Now you're part of that conversation, and you're ahead of all your other competitors who are coming later because they're only ranking for what they do. They're only ranking for motorcycle jackets and things like that. So creating opinionated guides around the overall topic, which for Bohn is going to be, I would even go beyond motorcycles to power sports, like power sports armor and power sports gear and protection, ranking for that kind of stuff. Brand storytelling also works well when it's tied to product use. So it's a good way to show a product being used by the customers, is really good for repurposing, for sending that out in email, for using it on social, and then having it on the blog as well as kind of a backup, or people who want to read more about that information. And it makes the product come alive instead of just it's this jacket versus that jacket and I'm just looking at two pictures. I can see Bohn is actually testing these things. People are actually using them. So that stuff does work well, not necessarily in search, but it just works well in general. I will make a note to look at Pando Moto's crash tested. That's a very cool series that I've talked about a lot in different live streams. Basically, they have a program where if someone crashes in Pando gear and sends them the story of the crash and pictures of the gear after the crash, they will replace the gear 100% for free. And that gives them really great content, and it also helps them do a lot of myth busting around the quality of their pieces, because they're a pretty new brand in the motorcycle gear space. But they can point to all these crash tests and say, we have real customers who have crashed in this gear and it actually works. It's not just safety ratings that we're passing. Our gear is actually keeping people safe. So that kind of storytelling is really, really good. And then myth busting as well, like timely content such as myth busting. So I remember the Fortnite gear video where Ryan basically in one take ripped apart armor. He ripped apart using motorcycle armor. And that's something where a lot of people are following Fortnite who are in motorcycles or not even riding motorcycles because it's just interesting content. And that's the kind of event where Bohn could jump on that and write a post about actually our tests are showing different things and basically bust that myth or write some commentary to add to that conversation, because a lot of people were talking about armor after that. And again, it's a great thing to then repurpose, to post that on Facebook, to post it on Instagram, to start a conversation with followers, because on those social platforms, if more people are interacting with your content, it's going to show that content to more people outside of your followers, because it's showing that it's interesting. You're telling them that this content is interesting. So that's another good one to build on, is like this timely content. So where are the gaps and opportunities? There can be kind of an overload of, well, what we want to write content. What do we write about? How do we organize this? What are the first 10, 30, 100 pieces going to be? And how do we structure that and build it out? So the thing I want to do here is just go through what pillars would fit with Bohn, with their customer profile, and with their products. So I think the first thing that we need to focus on is owning the under your clothes armor category, or motorcycle armor in general. A lot of their main flagship products are these armor leggings and shirts that are meant to be worn underneath abrasion protective armor to hold in, or abrasion protective material or textile, in order to hold that armor in place. So what can we write to own that category? And this is like simple, definitive content, armor base layers content, having different spokes, what I call spokes, like different articles linking back to that main article for different use cases, for commuting, for hot weather, ADV, cruiser riding, tall and short riders, women's fit, commuting to the office, things like this. There are some posts that touch this, but they're not dominating very well because they're not interlinked. They're not built under one silo. So owning that with explainers and buyer's guides, I think, is how I would conquer that first. And then standards and safety, I think, would be another huge boon for Bohn. Basically covering CE ratings, testing, crash tested stories. Just go through how all these things are developed and tested to create trust with customers. A lot of this may not get, like some of the stuff like CE ratings, people are Googling for that, it will get search traffic, but it's also very useful just as add-ons to the other explainers and buyer's guides to create trust with not only the algorithms, but with readers, that when they're reading through a buyer's guide, you're explaining what the CE rating is, and then you're linking them to another much longer, more in-depth explainer if they really want to know CE ratings. And that doesn't just educate, it just very quickly shows the customer that you understand the CE ratings, the importance of these, you understand testing and standards and all these things because you've written all this content about it. So standards and safety hub, comparison content. This is one that search volume usually does not show much promise here, but in my experience, we've gotten a lot of revenue driven from versus content. And that is basically comparing Bohn to competitors and writing like one-to-one comparisons. So like the Bohn leggings versus the Botex leggings, Pando's leggings versus the Bohn leggings, Botex versus Pando, just writing all these different versus pieces. There's tons of content that can be created here. And even though it doesn't get many searches, it's very low in what we call the buyer funnel. It's bottom of funnel content where people are ready to buy. They're just looking for, do I get this one or that one? So you get a lot of conversions out of that. So that kind of content can be really good to make. What else? Just going through my notes here. I think the last one I really want to include here is fit and sizing. So fit and sizing is one that I think Bohn could own, just because having these underlayers that stick to the body very closely, it's a unique take on motorcycle armor. And I know a big problem with a lot of motorcycle gear is the armor shifts around, especially when you don't exactly fit the cut of that jacket just right. And that shifting can be dangerous. If the armor moves too much in a crash, you may as well not be wearing it at all. So having this separate setup where the armor is hugged to you by lycra and very stretchy materials that are holding to your form, and then you can wear abrasion resistance over that. It's a different take that I think Bohn should be harping on more and more, and that's where if they can catch people who are looking for fit problems, I think they'll get a lot of customers through that. Yeah, looking for fit issues in jackets, pants. Cool. So fundamentals. I just want to go through a couple fundamentals of content. We talked a little bit about what Bohn is missing here in their content, but I basically just want to give the laundry list very quickly of what they should be including. So the content needs to be engaging. That's the first thing, and they're missing that on a lot of different fronts. The way to do this repeatedly, because I hear a lot of brands that say, I don't have the time to spend like thinking through all these blog posts. Just create a brief or a template that incorporates all the best practices and then hand that to your writers or your agency so that they know exactly how to write each piece. We've had a ton of success with this, especially because as your content gets out there and starts getting traffic and making conversions, you can then iterate on that template and just take the best parts of the pieces that are performing and make pieces better and better over time. So the spear intro we talked about earlier, that's super important. Having a customer perspective, writing to the customer rather than writing about the brand. Internal linking to other pieces, including images throughout. See this missing all the time in blogs. And rich CTAs, so like we do this on our site where we have these tables and these like plugins basically that show you the different products and then have a way to buy them. They have some information about who it's for, pros, cons, that kind of thing. So that's just a great way to pop out and show people, here's something that you can solve this problem with this product. And then consistency is also super important. So I recommend to most brands post 2 to 5 times a week. There really is no such thing as posting too much. If you're creating real content, if you're just telling ChatGPT post 1,000 pieces a day, that's too much. But realistically, you're never going to be able to post too much. And then wait 3 to 6 months for your first rankings. It will take some time. You have to be patient. But the great thing about content is once you build it, if it's high quality, it will last for years. You may have to make some updates or tweaks, especially if you're mentioning different products. You might have to do a sweep every season pretty much to clear out the old products and replace with new products. But it's very little effort for the amount of value that content is going to provide for you years and years in the future. Some of my highest performing pieces, they've been on the website for 4 years. Obviously, we've updated those, but they've been there just constantly ranking. Google is seeing that we're making updates and improving them. So consistency is super, super important, but have patience at the beginning. And again, if you're not producing high quality content, you're damaging your brand. The second fundamental is comprehensive content strategy. So are you covering the entire topic and then organizing subtopics or what I call hubs around different pillars? So a pillar could be something like hot weather gear or hot weather motorcycle riding. And then you're writing pieces like how to keep your motorcycle cool, how to keep yourself cool, the best motorcycle jackets for summer, the best motorcycle gloves for summer. And those are all linking back to that main hub topic and that main pillar piece. And then also go beyond your products to the problems that your ideal customer has. So again, with Bohn, they could very easily, I see brands do this all the time where they say, well, we do body armor, so we're just going to write about body armor. Well, you're missing all the people who, they aren't searching for body armor, but they want protection. They want somebody to sell them something that's going to keep them safe on the road. And they might choose Bohn, but if you're only writing about motorcycle armor and they only search for jackets and pants and helmets, they're never going to end up with Bohn. So go beyond your products, go to the problems that your ICP has. Then you're going to get a lot more traffic, a lot more conversions. The third thing is repurposing. So a blog post is an idea. you can use that idea everywhere. And the great thing is now that we have good AI tools, this can be sped up. So I do this in my own brand where we're developing different workflows to take a blog post and create a bunch of different pieces of content out of it. We can create a Facebook post, we can create a script for a YouTube video, we can create TikToks and short forms, Pinterest pins, all of that very quickly using AI to just repurpose that content. So you can use this blog post on email, on social media, in ads, all these different outlets for the same piece of content because you have given that content all of what we call the info gain, all the information that is helpful for the customer that you want them to learn that isn't out there already. That's kind of the secret sauce and the expertise of your team, as well as your research ability and ability to gather all this content from the web and put it into one place. That then the AI tools can basically change the format. That's all they're doing. So they don't have to do the heavy lifting of going and finding the information, because that's when AI tools often screw up, is trying to find this information and they, create fake stuff. So that's repurposing, and then measuring and iterate is the final thing. We do a quarterly review, but you can even do it monthly or annually if you don't have the expertise to do it or the time to do it. Basically what you're looking for is what content is driving traffic and driving conversions, and then you're taking your learnings from that to inform 1, your content strategy, and 2, your template. So it's a very simple process of just updating based on what you're seeing is working, and that is how we got our blog from per page making about 5 cents to making about $2 per visitor just with blog content. So final thing is 90-day plan. How do we actualize this and bring Bohn success through content marketing in just 90 days? So the first thing I would do is rewrites. Improve existing content using best practices and form hubs with internal links. Form hubs with internal links. So there is already some content here, it just needs to be improved. The great thing about rewrites is Google has already indexed this content, they're already looking at it, so it'll be very quick for it to update. It will update a lot faster than when you're adding new content. Oh, link blog from homepage. Immediately, this is a big one, because again, if Google can't get to your blog, and usually what they're gonna do is they're gonna crawl your homepage, look at all the links, and then go out from there. So if the blog isn't linked there, they're not finding the blog content, and then it's never going to rank, it's never going to get indexed, or it's going to take an extremely long time to rank and index. So I would start with link blog from the homepage, that takes 2 seconds, doing rewrites, and then building out pillar pages for those first few pillars, or one entire pillar first. I've seen both approaches work. Basically, you build out a bunch of different pillar pages, or you build out one entire pillar plus its hub pages first. And that gives you the first 5 to 10 pieces to create, basically. That's like month 1. Month 2 is, I would focus on comparisons, build out a list of product comparisons, and execute 10 to 20 of them, and then month 3 is just continue improving processes and begin repurposing. And that's where you're building out different pipelines to do all of this stuff on autopilot. Basically having writers that are creating all those pillar pages and creating a strategy as they go, adding more pillars to it, and then creating all those comparison pages, because there's going to be a lot of those. That I think each of those will kind of have their own template, and then in month 3 you're just figuring out how do we improve upon that and repurpose all of that content across different social channels. So I have follow-ups for each of these, except for fundamentals. But the final follow-up is basically identifying a DRI or an agency to handle this build out. And again, that's what our agency does, is build out this kind of content for brands based on the process that we created to build out our website. Every page in this website makes over $2,000 a year on average. So some don't, some make way more than that. So we know how to make high quality content, and we are now delivering that as a service to brands like Bohn. So if you're interested in this, just drop a comment or shoot me an email. Again, my email is in the description. Cool. Thanks. Have a good one. Peace.